And I've made this argument that what social media does do, it's a very emotive tool.
Yeah.
It allows a particular emotion to continuously manifest and be visible in the consciousness of people collectively. But what social media cannot do is maintain a particular internalized idea, emotions, and sentiment, which only happens by being embedded within people. So Rasul Sallam, when he gave da'wah, and I always make this case about Rasul Sallam, that he laughed with the ummah, he cried with the ummah. When the ummah suffered, he suffered. When the ummah were being tortured, he was tortured. When the ummah lost family members, he lost family members. And when the ummah were at Badr, he was at Badr. In that sense, being embedded in the community is very important, in the sense of not only being able to resonate with them, but to help them grow. Because what Rasulullah did, and this is my argument, is that for all the institutions we talk about in Islamic studies, about the building of institutions, the most powerful institutions he built were the Sahaba, were people. He invested in people because he lived with them day to day. So when Musab ibn Umair, and you and I have spoken about this, went to Medina, Rasulullah put absolute trust in Musab radiallahu anh, to go to Medina and run with it. He trusted the Islam that he gave to him. He trusted his character. He trusted what he did. So that sort of like being embedded in the community in that way, I think is important. What's happened, and I think this criticism is correct in some ways, is that what social media does is it makes it pretty lazy, and it creates a particular personality cult where then people start to subscribe to that personality. Alhamdulillah, I like to believe I'm not that person. That could change, and may Allah Ta'ala protect me from that. But the idea of being embedded in the community and, you know, not having that distance and being able to resonate with their pain, and especially in the case of Gaza, because I live in Istanbul, we have students from Gaza, and it was very painful for me because there were people I couldn't make eye contact with because of what they'd gone through and their family members had gone through. And as an educator, you feel the collective pain, and you realize, and people will come to you and say, we don't know how to navigate this space. And it's not that I have the answers, but we're going through it together. Now, it's not that I can tell them this is right or this is wrong, but with age comes a particular sort of like, you know, I spoke to Malik al-Badri, rahimallah. He was an Islamic psychologist. He was a very interesting man. You know, he met Malcolm X and Maududi and so forth. And he said to me that the way that Allah Ta'ala shapes his Anbiya is he puts them through life experiences to shape their character.
Right.
He doesn't need to test them. He chose them, right? But the reason why they're being tested is, one, for us to understand, but the two, to shape their character so that when they get to a particular point where Allah Ta'ala expects an objective from them, they have gone through a particular stage. And that's interesting about our culture, the notion of wisdom, right? Which is in the West, I no longer hear the idea of the parting of wisdom. I hear the idea of knowledge itself. But in our culture, wisdom is important.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about Rasul Sallam, and I mention him again, is that he's the walking Quran, right? In that sense, he's not just shaping your intellectual ideas, he's shaping you as a person. This is why we talk about the uniqueness of the Sahaba, in that sense, that he's imparting on them not just knowledge, but how to be in terms of people, right? And so the prophetic tradition, when it comes to teaching and to learning, is there's a particular decorum from the student and a particular decorum from the teacher. And our job as teachers then is not just to come into a classroom, teach and bounce, which is what happens here a lot. I am seeing that in Muslim societies, but that's not the type of person I wanted to be. So I take an invested interest in my students, what's happening in their lives, what are they struggling with, how can we improve them, how can I improve, how can we work together. So I have a relationship with my students that if I make a mistake, I am more than happy for them to correct me, even though I'm the educator here, right? Because we're a community, we live together in that sense. And when you create relationships and bonds, when it comes to knowledge, that knowledge is internalized far deeper than when it's just something abstract and intellectual. And this is where, I mean, I'm on the podcast and so forth, but this is what the podcast cannot do. This is where living amongst the community is important. And if, as an educator, I'm distant from the community, that's a problem. So now what I try to do is be as integrated within the community as I can be, so that I know what's happening in my community. so that we can find solutions for them. And that is the Islamic way. I mean, Jibreel alayhi salam taught Rasul sallam. Rasul sallam taught the Sahaba and the Muslims. And that is our tradition. We do not write books to be read. We write books to be taught. The teacher is the intermediary and the interlocutor between the knowledge and the book that's being taught in that sense. So the teacher is central. And our style of teaching, our pedagogy,
Yes.
is that we're not just teaching knowledge, we're teaching how to be human.